welcome to Limbering Up Drupal 8. We're going to be talking about flexible layouts, WYSIWYG templates, and more. First, a quick introduction of both of us.
I'm claymarshall. I'm a senior technical consultant for Chief in Washington, D.C., and also manager director of Preformatted Media. Big applause outside. Been working with Drupal since about 2007.
And I'm Kat Kuhl. I'm the director of technology at Chief, a DC firm, and I've been Drupaling since 2008. So my first experience with Drupal, I was actually more of a glorified content editor back in 2008. And I ended up working on a site that had been built by, I don't want to say a developer who didn't know what they were doing, but I want to hedge as close to that line as I possibly can. And whenever I was trying to input content and saying, hey, I'm having trouble with this, I got this response constantly. It's supposed to work like that. I was told that you were supposed to only be able to put images at the top of the page, and that the things that I was trying to attempt as a content editor, I just wasn't supposed to do, which was really a problem because the direction I was getting from the client was that they wanted their site to, let's say, work. So the result is that what I brought through my career as a developer and now ultimately managing a development team is that whenever we try to build a content management system, the key to making that successful is winning over the content admins. If your content admins hate your system, if they can't figure out, we did start too early, if they can't figure out how to edit content, ultimately they're going to hate what you built for them, and they're going to campaign to get it rebuilt pretty much as soon as you have left the team. So what we try to do to win them over is find out early in the project what they need to do, and then make that as easy as humanly possible. So oftentimes we're building systems that have a whole lot of different layouts. And initially, there's plenty of room up here, guys. You guys want to sit down? Initially, we had this system of just building different content types. And the problem is, if you have these needs for them to look very different, you end up building way too many content types, the system gets way too complex too quickly, and you're still offering more rigidity than you really should be. So the flip side, how some people try to afford their content admins flexibility is by saying, you can do whatever you want, you just need to know some HTML. And if you've ever tried to have a content editor work in the WYSIWYG and you've tried to get them to use source view, you've probably gotten the really dirty look from them, so I don't have to try to replicate it here. So instead, what we've focused on at Chief, as well as at Trestle Media, is we're trying to simplify the process of choosing layouts, adding media, and adding pre-formatted content so that when content editors get in there, they're not trying to use something that's really overly complex or difficult for the sake of ease on the developers. Our vision is ultimately a system that lets content editors make decisions in context, that lets them say, this is what I need to do, and then has a system that is powerful enough to back it up. And for this particular talk, we also have a goal of doing it in Drupal 8. Clay and I have given this talk twice before now, last year in DC, and then this summer at the DrupalCon in New Orleans. And the big update at New Orleans was making it work in Drupal 8, which is still very much kind of stabilizing. So first we're going to talk about the process of choosing layouts and what that looks like practically. So, to show this, first I'm going to talk about what we mean by layouts. And we have two examples. I would love to tell you, by the way, that I built NewYorkTimes.com. Sadly, I did not. So here, this is a regular article. It's pretty typical of the Times and the Times Insider. Up here, we're showing other content because our goal is to get people into our site and then have them continually exploring within it. We can see the previous post and the next post, a little bit about the Times Insider. If you scroll down even more, you're just seeing general recent articles that are not related to the one that you're on. But that's not to say that this article experience isn't a good one. You still have plenty of room to play with. You have a big header image. Using media contextually within the piece, you have some sharing tools, of course. And then you do have a video, which does not autoplay. And then still, again, you're pointing them to other parts of your site. Now, in contrast to that, this is what one of their feature articles looks like. You can tell they've blown out the experience completely. Up here at the top, you can still tell you're at the New York Times, but it's really not the focus. The focus is the actual content. And here, this overtakes it completely, and as you start scrolling, you notice there is no related content. The whole goal is to keep you right here, not to send you chasing through the site, because they think they have something really compelling here where they want your attention. Here, the video autoplays, but you can still pause it and stop it. And then the only related content you have is things that are related to the piece you're actually on, and then of course an ad because it is still the New York Times. And as you keep scrolling, which I'm not going to do the entire way through, you can tell that it's long and there's a lot going on in here within it that's really keeping your attention. So in our Drupal demo, we're showing a couple examples of how this can be done, and then we're going to walk you through how we did it for the rest of the demo. This is a regular article. Again, you've got this image at the top, but you've also got some related articles that are driven by taxonomy. And as you scroll down, you've got some headings and then an attribution at the bottom. Over here, this is one that is blowing out the experience a little bit more, and you have some pre-formatted content snippets that are dropped in. You have a video, some media, lazy loading area over here, and then some audio. And then finally with this one, you have a video header, which you can pause if you don't want it to keep looping, but otherwise it will just loop on repeat. And then you have the article. So we're going to talk about how we use a mixture of panels and WYSIWYG templates and media options here to accomplish this. I'm going to back up awkwardly here.
Okay. So when we talk about how we did this, it's going to look very familiar to my friend Eugen here, because it's something that we worked on together quite a while ago, and sort of started, at least for us here at Chief, a conversation about this. But we're making these different layout options based on what's happening within panels. So the first thing we're trying to do is define these panel layouts in our code. We're creating page variants within the page manager and panel tools. And then we set selection rules to figure out when we want to fire each of these panels, when we want to have them become active. So in Drupal 7, when we did this with the panels and panels UI, which contributed, and page manager, which was part of C-Tools. It's basically the same process now within Drupal 8. But we're using essentially the panels, which is more of an API at this point, layout plugin, which allows us to define our layouts within simple YAML files, and then a page manager, which is another contrib module that is alpha state right now. It still has a lot of work to do, but it's coming along pretty well, and so working well enough for a demonstration here. So within this, we talk about what the layout plugin does. It allows us here to actually define the different layouts we want to use and make available to panels and the time and the variants we want to use with them. So you'll see here we have an article sidebar, basically giving simple layout, simple YAML structure, rotating where the path of this Twig file is going to be, what its CSS can use at this point, and then defining regions within it. In this first one, the article sidebar, we have a primary content and then a sidebar region. Within the article feature one, that second option you saw, you see that right there, we've sort of simplified a bit. We just have a large hero up top, and we have just a primary content field. That's what's allowing us to put all that content through the body there. The last one you see here in the slides is just a snippet of, you see the article video feature. We're actually creating a different region for that and what other elements will be part of that. So when we look at what these Twig files look like, you're going to see here it's pretty simple, just simple div class structure, telling these things a basic layout of what's going to happen within that body. We're just writing in here within the region content, just dynamically placing the twig of the content primary, and then content sidebar and a sidebar div. We look at the header, and you see the only real difference here is we just added a new region. Just like adding regions back in Drupal 7, we're just adding a different region to define there that we want available to us within that panel. And then the article feature, we've simplified even more. We've just got a hero primary content. So what that looks like when we're looking through the page manager and through panels and defining it here, in our example here, we're using a single content type to switch between all these. So we're basically saying within a node, we want to fire any particular node that's created. We want this panel to fire with these variants available to us. So we've defined variants for articles of feature with video, article with sidebar, and article with sidebar and header. Those variants at this point are defined by its path. There are some challenges that I'll explain in one second, that with the actual page manager right now, with getting some more selection criteria available, at least I had some inconsistent efforts with it, but we know it works well as defining based on path or by node type. If you want to do individual multiple node types, you can set the node bundle to be article, to be blog post, to be news release, whatever. In this case, we want them all to be one content type because we want to be able to change them based on just changing a value. And we're using right here the request path of that item to figure out which layout it should use based on where it is in the structure of the site. So as I said, in our previous demo of Drupal 7, we used fields. We could use basically a taxonomy term, just any other kind of the old CCK field or any other content field, and use the value of that to switch. The Setting that context in new page managers I've had some difficulty with. Like I said, what we're using here is a path, and it's just being set right now, but when you change and save the page, it creates a new URL path for that item based on the option we select, then it defines and changes the layout. So within that, you're going to see actually when we're looking at what essentially is a panel here, we have the blocks, and here this is, because it's the one that is just the hero and primary content, you'll see that we're just putting in a view at the top and loading in the primary entity view at the bottom. So if we look at our quick demo here, you'll see this is our feature article here that Kat showed you a minute ago. The way that we're changing this is just simply by re-editing and just changing its layout type. So if I change this to article, a sidebar with header, you'll see it changes to a different layout where it has a header image is now placed at the top. It's more contained. It's showing related articles, which is a view we have based in the panel outside. It's using a taxonomy term that was applied to this article to figure out which items should show over there. But still, all the other elements that were in this page exist still. Same thing with the lazy load sidebar. All those elements are still there. We're just changing the structure based on a simple change in the value to figure out how we want this content to appear. So again, just a simple change of and it restructures the path, and we get this layout. Okay, it's no longer got its header across the top. It's now a simpler structure. It has a new view on the side based on that, and it's being placed dynamically that way.
Sorry, is this feature, does it apply for a whole content type or on a per node basis?
This is per whole content. So we're looking at all just one content type called an article. We're changing, our hope is to change just one simple value for a content editor to then change its entire layout experience based on that change.
But that is changing on a per node basis. So if you make that change,
Oh, yeah.
It's not going to make the entire content type use it. It's going to make that one node that you changed use it.
Yeah.
So you said that was based on a URL, or just using path auto or something?
Yeah, it's a path auto rule. It's just using the token of that item at this point.
That's what I thought, but I wanted to be sure.
Yeah. So when you look at that, what it's writing, it's actually writing an article feature or article at the path, and that's what's firing it. Like I said, that's just one of the most consistent things with PageManner right now. I imagine soon we're going to have all these other fields where you can create your own taxonomy term that does that, or create a separate sort of content field itself just to find options.
So after you've got them able to change the layouts, that's going to make it really useful to change how we treat the image at the top, but it's not going to make it easier to place images throughout it. And this is one of the things that we found pretty consistently. Drupal likes you to just add an image field at the top and then have that image, you put it on the left, you put it on the right, you put it in the just centered. But your content admins don't like it. They want to be able to place it wherever they need it. So we saw in the New York Times article earlier is that they're placing media continually down the page, and being able to do that in context becomes really critical. So focusing first for media with what admins want from their images, they want them to be retina-friendly out of the box. They don't want to have to think about that to the extent they care about retina at all. They want control over the size of the image, control over its positioning, and the ability to caption it. So if you're giving them an image that is just appearing at the top of all your articles, you're failing right out of the box because they can't reposition it where they need it to be. And this is showing that you can go ahead and make it responsive and retina friendly, but that's not meeting all the qualifications, so that's why we've tried to turn to other methods. Now, in Drupal 7, this was really easy because media had finally gotten really stable toward in the last year or two. So we've been recommending embedding video, audio, and images all inline through that. We have a pretty good suite of modules that we use to have a complete media solution for all the Drupal 7 sites we did, which is file uploads through file entity, embedding through media, of course, responsive images through breakpoint and picture, and then video through whatever module provider you like to use. All of this was in Contrib. So unfortunately, there is no media for Drupal 8. That has just been broken up into various different modules. So we've had to change our approach here a little bit. And we've, generally speaking, replaced media with entity embed. Most of the other items here have stayed the same, except that breakpoints and responsive images are now in core. The support for responsive images is much better in Drupal 8 than it was in Drupal 7 out of the box. And then finally, there's a video solution here that will work with whatever video provider you want to use. So this has left us hoping for even more integration in Drupal 8 going forward. There's an extremely lengthy article here which I'm gonna show you just for fun. It's gone quite long about having this image styling and responsive image mapping in the Drupal WYSIWYG. They are working on it very hard here. But currently, as of 9 days ago, they've got a patch that might be possibly working, but it's more than 100K. So while we would really like to say to just rely on Drupal bringing this into core, we're not quite there yet. So this is what we've started doing ourselves. We are defining the breakpoints in a YAML file, which you would have to do anyway, creating image styles, creating responsive image styles from them, and then in lieu of media or the responsive images coming entirely in-house in Drupal, we're using entity embed and entity browsers to actually place the images in the meantime. So here you can see how we're defining the breakpoints in that YAML file. There's one breakpoints file here, and you can label these so that you're really showing what they are. So we have narrow, desktop, and wide, and we're showing the media queries for each, as well as the multipliers for each. The breakpoint module also has some really great documentation if you're wondering how this is going to work in Drupal 8 and haven't gotten to play with it yet. Next up, we're creating the actual breakpoint sets. Here we have the WYSIWYG large responsive image style, and that is being told to use a certain image style when it's just at 1x desktop and another one when you're at 2x desktop. So that way, as long as the content editors are uploading a 2400 by 1200 image to start, everything else is just going to fall into place. And then finally, we're configuring this to actually have embed buttons set up in the WYSIWYG editor. So here you can see that with the that embed module I mentioned earlier, you can configure different types of embed buttons. You could have just one single embed button from which you handle all media. We found it's actually a bit easier for people to get their heads around if you have different types of embeds for different types of files. So even though we could run audio and image from the same button, people like icons. It makes it really clear. And then the video modules that we mentioned earlier add their own embed buttons, so we don't have to account for them here. So the next piece here with entity embeds, this is one that we're really excited to have working now. If you're using just the entity embed module out of the box, you have to do two things that are very annoying. One is that you have to go and upload the image through a completely different screen. You have to go to, I think it's content, files, add file, to get the image in the system at all, and then you can reference it. This is another of those moments that if you say that to a content editor, why? Why would you do that? Why can't you work like every other CMS and just upload it through the WYSIWYG? So this is allowing you to actually provide that upload support so they can upload it from within it. And the second is that it adds a browser that Clay will demo in a moment where you can take a look at what the images look like if you're choosing from something pre-selected. So rather than just typing in a file name and saying, yeah, that looks like about the same file name, you get to see the thumbnails and verify visually that you are embedding what you want to be embedding. So the entity browser takes a little bit of work to configure, but not too much. There are several steps, but you can tell it to be an iframe, tabs, selection display. We're not choosing a particular pre-existing selection display, but we do have the opportunity to really control how it's going to work once it's loaded in. So here that we are adding both the opportunity to do an upload and just upload a brand new file, and have a view of pre-existing files that have already been uploaded to the system, the same way that you would do for a node reference field. If you were configuring a view that would support the node reference field, very similar. So with that, we're going to show a demo, and cross your fingers for us, because anytime you're doing a live demo, you know how it goes.
So within here, what I'll show first is just attaching a simple image. So at the top here, we're using, you'll see here, there's our embed button here.
The screen though?
I can try. It might make it a little difficult in terms of room in the WYSIWYG. Is that okay? Okay. So I've got the embed button here that we created, and then again the option to upload or from our view here, pick a rendered entity. Just going to pick one from here. And then here you have similar functions if you've seen in Drupal 8, actually just adding an image. Some of these things are the same, where you have some positioning controls, the ability to add a caption. The one thing that's important here is we have the ability now to actually render the responsive image, and we have sets here that we've defined to be able to use for that image style. So we have alt text to use, and we can use a caption here. An embed. and you'll see that we get the image placed, and it gets pretty good representation within the WYSIWYG. We are using our exterior style sheet for what's happening within here, but so within that, we can place images that way. We can place images that will also position float left or right. We can attach videos. This is the video embed here. That is just using either Vimeo or YouTube items. And it places the responsive video. It's a little bit accurate in the way it displays, but you get an idea. It's taking up the space. When it renders on the front end, it shows you the full width player. And then likewise also, we have the ability here to actually attach just an audio that's configured now just through the file display of audio to use an HTML5 player. So we can use the audio button here. And just pick MP3. We also have the same option here where we can define a caption for it. And again, it positions in place. Although I do want to actually position that left so it wraps. And then we save our node. It all magically appears. We've got our image with the caption, our video playing, it's responsive at full width, and the player here nested with its HTML5 player where it belongs.
The nice thing as well with Drupal 8 and some of what's been released now is that you can also embed a smaller image, and you can use that left, right, and center alignment pretty easily to get it aligned to the correct place. Rather than doing that align equals left thing that we saw in Drupal 7 for a long time, we are seeing controls that you can actually use to, with your CSS. So finally, we're going to talk about pre-formatted content. This is probably one of the biggest pain points that I hear people talk about with content editors, because there are some things that to get them displaying right, you have to know some HTML. At a very minimum, you have to know what classes are already configured in the CSS. And content editors either don't know that out of the box, or they forget it, or they use it inconsistently. So dropping in a little pre-formatted content and giving them control over what they want to use when allows them to get the impact of having something really styled without having to remember how to actually do it. So here, this is just an example of what I mean when I talk about pre-formatted content. Here you have an item that's popping out, but it's still pretty normal styling, just, I don't know, Arial and some bolding here. This is a little more eye-catching with pre-formatted heading and then some italics that are the way that the description is displaying on the New York Times, and then finally a link to part 2. This is an eye-catching block quote that blows up quite large, but still is, you could accomplish this at least with block quote styling. And then here finally is the placement of an image. And this again is a place where we see a lot of challenge for content editors if they have to figure out how to place the image and then how to wrap the entire thing in a div that has a decent markup. So in Drupal 7, we accomplished this using the WYSIWYG API Templates plugin module. Say that 5 times fast. And it was really nice and stable, in great shape. I think it has about 10,000 people using it. And unfortunately in Drupal 8, it's not stable yet, but there is a nice pre-release version. And it's being used for a pretty narrow use case, just to drop in code. So we've used it tentatively, of course with an asterisk. But it seems like it's in a good shape to use. One thing I will say is that you have to remember to grab the CK Editor Content Templates plugin, and that links to this right here on the actual CK Editor site. If you don't have that dropped in, then you will spend 20 to 30 minutes trying to figure out why this isn't working, if you're anything like me. So this module allows you to configure these WYSIWYG templates under the configuration content authoring screen. And it does this by, you can define them however you'd like, very ad hoc, just add a template, and then go in and drop in the markup that you want to place. So here, this is the slow load one you might have seen pop up on the right earlier. We call it Sidebar Content Slow Load, and we have attached the classes that you typically would not remember to put in, but when they're put in for you, it makes it that much easier. So we have fade in container, as well as sidebar content block for positioning. We have the image, the headline, and a class, the paragraph text for that sidebar.
So the demo of the WYSIWYG templates, Kat just showed you how they're constructed. So back within our same content item, just going to run out of room, so I got to find some place for it. This is the icon that comes out of the box with the WYSIWYG template. So we're just going to insert the template. You can choose a content item, see it just positions it in right where it's supposed to be. It's pretty close to, once again, what you're going to see on the front end. Obviously, because of the WYSIWYG editor, it cannot position further left. But when you see this place, it actually positions out based on our CSS needs. The content then is editable for editors to do. Of course, if just like anything in the WYSIWYG, if they just go delete this whole thing, it's a problem. But at least it gives them guidance for starting point of how to create an item that's a WYSIWYG item. So they have the ability just to add their items here. That slow load item we can position the same way. Just start a paragraph, give it a place to go. You'll notice it didn't appear. It's actually over here. We can work on the CSS here to bring it in, whatever's easiest. I actually find it nice that it's kind of hanging out there. I know where it is. I know it's off to the side, not messing with the content. But the same thing here with an image. We are able to attach an image using the same image embed. Again, be a responsive image. I want a small one over here because of where it is. Of course, it's always good to type steal your face logo. And then down there for caption, embed. Puts it in place. Once again, the content is fully editable.
You should replace it.
What's that?
You should replace it.
And replacing the same way here, actually. You can actually just go back within the Synthetly Embed tool. You can replace the selection with another item if you need to. Again, just browsing the same way. Keep the same format. Of course, we would need to change the alt tag if we change the image, but you get the idea. And then saving the item. You'll see again all the same elements. Got our sidebar blocked, positioned as we wanted to outside, styled by the CSS. Some lazy load with some JavaScript on the side by the class added to that. So again, without much work for an editor, be able to place these items and still create some dynamic elements that are breaking outside that.
Can I ask you a question? Have you guys looked at doing place editing at all, or is that a workflow you actually stepped away from?
It's not something we were comfortable with. It's the same problem we had sometimes with panels IPE. It's just it just adds another layer of complexity sometimes for editors, and we're trying to make it as structured as possible. It's not something we've pushed off the side, but it's just something that we have lots of editors that are used to creating content by going its way, being in the WYSIWYG and doing that within the page of editing a node, feeling comfortable with all the other publishing controls. I think it's just that we are not overly comfortable, have enough experience passing that off to clients yet is probably it.
So the major thing that we found throughout the theme running through all this is really being an advocate for your content editors. The easier you try to make their lives, the more they're going to end up liking your system and the more that they're going to advocate for you. So the 3 items that we've run through so far, choosing layouts, helping them to add media, and finally helping them to have pre-formatted content snippets have, we found in general, made their lives much easier so that when they walk away from our project, they don't say, wow, Drupal sucks, we need to get WordPress, or Drupal sucks, we need to get Joomla, which I guess no one's actually ever heard, but where they're much more likely to stick with the system and have long-term adoption, which is also good for our agencies because our clients continue to work with us on other projects. I think that having that strong content editor relationship and really demoing this repeatedly during development so that they can get comfortable with it has been the secret to a lot of the success that we've had and that we've seen a lot of other shops have as well. So we have some time here for questions, and then if anyone would like to see some additional tools that we use to help content editors manage their content, we can demo that as well with admin views. We want to make sure that we leave time for questions on this approach if anyone has them. In the back. Backish. Yes, you.
So sorry if I missed this. When you were inserting that content into the WYSIWYG template, was that static content or was that dynamic breakpoint?
No, when we're inserting it into the content, that is static content. We're giving people the freedom to edit that. But when we were doing the initial demo of the upfront regular article and there's content populating in the sidebar, that is dynamic content. So that's pre-configured that it's just going to show up related content via taxonomy. But when we are placing it inline, we try to let people do that part themselves. So it's pre-configured with what we think some sample content could be. That's one of the very few places where we use lorem ipsum, so it makes it very clear it needs to be replaced. But it's just there to give guidance on how you can format it, not to be the content for you.
What we do a lot of times is that, I mean, that item gets placed a lot of times with clients have very specific needs, that they just want a block, like a block quote that always looks like this, that always had one client wanted their logo next to that block quote every time it did. So it created a way that they could do that. Within a structured environment, they could place it and just simply change what when the line of quote is, but everything else was already included with that. So it was an easy way to put in, and we knew exactly what styles it was going to pick up and kept a consistent experience for users.
And the reason why I asked Clay to show I'm replacing it earlier is that the ability to replace that image after it's been flowed in is relatively new, definitely new from what we've been able to do in Drupal 8. So that has been key, like letting people just double click it rather than deleting it and re-uploading entirely has been nice.
And if I would like to replicate that kind of interface that you just showed us, can I do this with just the contract modules that exist, or do I have to do some custom programming?
I don't think we did. I'll let you take that one.
We did the first time we did this at New Orleans. There's a lot of stuff we did that we had to sort of, like responsive images within the body of the WYSIWYG was a problem. I ended up writing something that actually was just, we would actually just write in the URI, but I'll pre-process it out and actually render a responsive image that way. But this, with the latest updates to this, we were able to place pretty much into those entities a responsive image in just as we needed to. So that wasn't necessary. The WYSIWYG template API module is finicky. The content templates we showed you that you need to pull in from a CK editor, I had a lot of trouble getting it to actually recognize that plugin was where it was supposed to be. So you need the libraries module, you had to put that plugin in there, and in a certain format it was looking for that plugin specifically. So that was a little tricky, but it was also pretty clear. It kept throwing a JavaScript error that it couldn't find it. So getting it to work was not hard, and they're continually daily making improvements to that too. I think there's a lot of getting pressure to get this out on an alpha state. Once that is on alpha, I'd say that pretty much from the modules you've got, you can get pretty close to replicating what we have here. The biggest thing outstanding to me is I would like to be able to more easily switch layouts based on a value of a field, not what I'm doing with paths right here. Like and we have lots of clients that are interested in that idea, that they want this idea where they want to sometimes promote something huge, and it's a big initiative for them, but then sometimes they want to demote it back down to where it belonged in the blog. So that idea of switching a layout came directly from clients' requests, that I just want this to be like a landing page, but I want to move it back where it belongs in the context of the history of all my other content.
Other questions? Cool. All right, if anyone does have interest in sticking around to see some admin views that we put together to help clients out, then I can run through them quickly. If anyone here who is already very experienced with views and admin views and would like to take off, I will not be offended in the least. So this is one of the features that we have added recently to help out. We started ensuring that when we ship, we're shipping our site with one of these. It's a really traditional, honestly, if you've been working with views for a while, nothing in here should look unusual to you, but it's been useful for clients to be able to go in and just say, look, I know I wrote an article about this, but I'm not sure where it is. This is something we take for granted a lot, especially if you are really familiar with the database. It's easy to get this information if you're a developer. It's hard to get this information if you're an admin. So we've started including these content search views. And then as a bonus, if you are into accessibility and your clients are not, or they're trying to get interested in it and they are still kind of struggling with it, we have this ability to search for certain common patterns that will break often. So having IMG tag but not an alt tag, or jumping directly to an H3 and skipping an H2 becomes extremely quick to target to show you exactly what articles have trouble, so you can go in and fix them and then replace it. Then my personal favorite, this gives your more senior content editors the ability to police other editors who are less senior. So if you know that there are some words like click here, for example, that should not be getting used at all, this is giving them the ability to look, check, and say, hey, hang on, I've got to go tell someone that they need to learn how to link a little bit more effectively. Same things with tables that are in there for layout and don't have any table headers. So again, the key theme here is just empowering your content editors to police themselves and not having them continually having to click through every article when it is time to do QA. You may also want to allow them to do search when it was created, or even expose taxonomy terms so they can quickly look through and get a better grasp of their content. So that's that. And that's our presentation. Thank you guys so much for your attention. We really appreciate it, and feel free to come up if you have any questions.